Hey everybody, Mike Naso here from IPR with the latest on the tropics. And of course, we have a new tropical depression out there, which is at the right-hand side of your screen coming into view in the central Atlantic. And then out here in the western Caribbean, we have this tropical wave. Now, there is an upper level low over the Gulf of Mexico, and that's helping to fire convection. And there's nothing organized there yet, but it has become an invest, and we'll have to keep a close eye on it. We'll talk about both of these features, of course. First, our depression, tropical depression 4, winds of 35 miles an hour, gusting up to 45. Could become a tropical storm over the next day or so. It's moving quickly to the west at 20, pressure 1,005 millibars, and you can see that center position about 12 north, 31.6 west. So it's not that far south, but it isn't yet too far north. So it's right here in the middle of 10 and 15 at about 12.0 north. And you can see the projected track from the National Hurricane Center has it moving quickly off basically to the west, maybe even a little bit south of west due to a very strong ridge. And by Wednesday, it should be approaching 45 and starting to move into a more favorable environment for strengthening and then begin more of a west-northwest track. And by Friday, it could become a hurricane. And by Friday night, it could be a very uh, uh, decent hurricane, strengthening as it moves through the Leeward Islands, and then be a Category 2 of about 105 by Saturday morning here south of the U.S. Virgin Islands. Now, one can interpret that if it continued on this track, it would head towards Hispaniola, which is known to kill hurricanes. You could have a Category 5 hit Hispaniola and it leaves as a tropical storm, as we saw Hurricane David back in '79 do. However, one must be very careful when extending a track when even after this point there is a great deal of uncertainty. As you can see, it could be well to the south, it could go through the windwards, it could be well to the north and head up here towards, say, 20 north and 65 west. So right now, if you're in the islands, start to make your plans, start to get your plan of action in place right now. You should have done that on June 1st. If it isn't done, get ready because you could have a pretty powerful hurricane impacting you by the weekend. Now, looking at the latest satellite imagery on Visible, they said 12.0 and about 32, so the center is right about here. Now, it's under some easterly shear, and you see some of this stable air to the north. The flow is so heavy on the system that there is shear from the east as it moves along. So even though it's moving along quickly, it's still getting a lot of the convection on the western side. I know usually we're talking about westerly shear where everything's to the east, but it's the opposite. And when you see this here, this kind of tail extending out, that's not very favorable. So right now the system is struggling a bit as the center is in here and most of the convection is to the west of the center. However, what should happen is if this center tucks back under the convection, it should strengthen into a tropical storm as it moves on off towards the west and west-northwest. Now here's the latest model guidance, and you can see that they're starting to bend a little bit more north. The hurricane center is almost on a little bit of the southern edge, so don't be surprised if at 5 you see the track extended a little bit further north. And sometimes that happens. If the system starts to take more of a northerly track through time, you will see more of a track up in this general direction. However, as noted, the GFS continues it all the way in through the Caribbean, and a lot of models take it generally towards the northern islands and Puerto Rico. So definitely the hurricane center in there starts out further south than most of the model guidance does, but then ends up a little bit further north. So we'll wait and see. Again, anywhere really within the hurricane center cone is where you may expect the system to go. Now you can see the wind shear here is very favorable out ahead of the system, and you can see there's actually an anticyclone there. So if the system gets under this, it could have a very favorable environment. A lot of times when you get ridges of high pressure, you end up actually getting a very good environment for a hurricane to intensify in. Right now you still have that 40-knot wind shear sector in here that I mentioned yesterday. However, when we look at the central Atlantic satellite imagery from yesterday, you saw the shear in here coming from this upper level low over the islands, and here came our system. Well, 24 hours later, you could see our system has definitely come into view, and that vector here is gone as the upper level low is now over Puerto Rico moving west. So This system should have a pretty good environment over the next several days to intensify slowly, but then once it gets past 50 to 55, not only will the winds be favorable, but the heat potential really increases around the islands. And so that's why the Hurricane Center is warning that this could become a hurricane on Friday and then maybe even close to major hurricane on Saturday, meaning that as it moves through the islands, it could be strengthening quickly. Those hurricanes that are intensifying as they come inland seem much worse than even they are at the time. Remember Maryland back in 95? Only a 100-mile-an-hour storm, it seemed like a Category 4 to some. It was very devastating because it was intensifying as it spun through. So we need to wait and see just what it does. You can see here it is struggling for sure with the center out in this area, but there is convection with it, and despite all the dry air to the north and around the system, it's carrying a pretty good moisture envelope. Now in the western Atlantic, we're dealing with this tropical wave, and I don't see anything really organized there yet, but it is an invest. Upper level low in here, and a lot of times what you get during hurricane season are systems like this that move up, and you always have to concern yourself with the possibility that it starts to spin up as it moves into the western Gulf, and that's kind of what we're thinking right now. If it develops, that's where it would probably go, either into northern Mexico or South Texas. It's unknown at this point in time. Out in the central Pacific, look at this. This is a very dangerous hurricane headed directly south of Hawaii. This is Hurricane Flossie. Just when you thought Flossie was out, they pulled her back in. Winds are back up to 140 miles an hour, had been down to 130. And this was the same situation as 24 hours ago where I told you that winds had increased back up to 140 yesterday at this time from 135. So it weakened yesterday, then re-strengthened, then weakened yesterday, and re-strengthened this morning. And now it's looking like it could pass just to the south of Hawaii tomorrow night as a Category 3 hurricane. Pressure 957 millibars, so the pressure is up about 11 millibars from this time yesterday, but again, winds 140 miles an hour. It's moving west-northwest now at 14, no longer to the west. So we are seeing that northerly component. And looking at satellite imagery, this is a nasty little hurricane here. I'd hate to be in that eye wall where those winds are about gusting over Category 5 status. You can see here there is some wind shear that'll start to impact the system, but how fast it weakens is critical. And just how far north it extends as it moves south of Hawaii will dictate what the impact will be. Definitely going to get high surf though, no doubt. And finally in the western Pacific we have Tropical Storm CPAT here. A lot of cold cloud tops bursting. Here's the latest on it. Winds are up to 70 miles an hour, gusting to 85. It's very close to becoming a typhoon. Should become a major typhoon, about a Category 3 if you were to show it on the Saffir-Simpson scale by Friday morning, and then strike Taiwan Friday night, and then be a Cat 2 typhoon on Saturday morning heading towards China. So watch out if you're there, and you can see it bursting and hints of a warming right around where it looks like the eye will pop out. We will likely get Typhoon CPAT and see this continue off generally towards the west-northwest. So I'm Mike Naso. Stay tuned to podweather.com for further updates. I'll see you tomorrow. Looks like we're probably going to have Dean on our hands, and it may be a nasty hurricane.